Michael Harrington wasn't supposed to be driving on that lonely stretch of county road. His routine was perfectly scheduled. Wake up at 6, breakfast prepared by his personal chef, driven to the office by his chauffeur, and back home by 7. But today, Thomas had called in sick with the flu, and rather than call for a replacement, Michael decided to drive himself. Not just to work, but somewhere else afterward. Somewhere quiet, somewhere real. The meeting with investors had gone exactly as expected. Handshakes that lasted just a second too long, smiles that never reached the eyes, and promises built on foundations of sand. 20 years as CEO of Harrington Enterprises had taught him to dance this dance flawlessly, but lately, the music had started to sound hollow. "We'll circle back next quarter," he had told them, knowing full well that meant nothing. Walking to his car in the underground garage, Michael loosened his tie and made a split-second decision. Instead of taking the highway back to his Beacon Hill mansion, he turned onto Route 117, heading west out of Boston. The Massachusetts countryside unfurled before him as city became suburbs, suburbs became towns, and towns faded into rolling farmland. The late September air had a crisp bite to it, and the trees were just beginning their annual transformation. Michael rolled down the window of his Bentley, letting the unfamiliar scent of hay and earth replace the sterile air freshener. 3 hours later, with the sun beginning its descent, he found himself on a dirt road he couldn't name in a county he barely recognized. His phone had lost signal an hour ago. The navigation system kept recalculating to no avail. For the first time in years, Michael Harrington was truly lost, and surprisingly unbothered by it. The winding path narrowed between vast, empty fields dotted with forgotten farm equipment. Barbed wire fences stretched along both sides, their posts leaning with age. It was silent out here, the kind of silence that made the city seem like a distant dream. No horns, no voices, no constant hum of humanity. Just the occasional rustle of wind through tall grass and the purr of his engine. That's when he saw them. Just a flicker of movement at first, caught in his peripheral vision. 2 small figures huddled near a rusted gate about 50 yards ahead. Had he blinked, he might have missed them entirely, obscured as they were by the overgrown weeds. Michael slowed the car, a strange feeling pulling at him. If he were home in Boston, he might have driven past, might have assumed someone else would handle whatever this was. But here, miles from anywhere, there was only him. He pulled over, the tires crunching on gravel. Something about the stillness of those figures, they hadn't moved, hadn't reacted to his approach, set off alarms in his mind. He stepped out of the car, the door closing with a heavy thud that echoed across the empty landscape. "Hello," he called out, taking cautious steps forward. No response. As he drew closer, confusion turned to concern. Behind the locked fence sat 2 little girls, identical down to the last detail. Twins, with honey blonde hair tangled by the wind and dirt. They couldn't have been older than 7. Their clothes, once colorful by the looks of the faded patterns, were torn at the edges and stained with mud. Their faces were streaked with tear tracks that had cut paths through the dust on their cheeks. One clutched a threadbare teddy bear, its stuffing visible through a seam that had begun to split. The other had an arm wrapped protectively around her sister's shoulders. What struck Michael most wasn't their appearance, though that was alarming enough. It was their eyes, wide, wary, and far too knowing for children so young. Eyes that had seen things they shouldn't have. Eyes that held questions no child should need to ask. They didn't scream or cry out. They didn't try to run. They simply looked up at him with that unsettling gaze, as if they'd been waiting for someone, anyone, to notice them. "Are you okay?" Michael asked, crouching down to their level even with the fence between them. His voice came out softer than he intended, almost unfamiliar to his own ears. When was the last time he had spoken to a child? The girls exchanged a glance, a silent communication that needed no words. Finally, the one with the teddy bear nodded, a barely perceptible movement. "What are you doing out here all alone?" he pressed, looking around for any sign of adults, any sign of life at all. There was nothing but fields stretching to the horizon. "Waiting," the other girl whispered, her voice so faint Michael had to lean closer to the fence to hear her. "Waiting for what?" "For someone safe," she said, with a simplicity that broke something inside him. Michael's hand went to his pocket, reaching for his phone before remembering it had no service. The gate was secured with a rusted padlock, but the fence itself was old, the posts loose in the dry soil. He tested one section and found it gave way with minimal pressure. He pushed harder, creating a gap just wide enough. "I'm going to help you," he said, surprised at how certain he felt. "Can you come through here?" The girls hesitated, looking at each other again. Then, slowly, they crawled through the opening he'd made, movements cautious as frightened deer. Up close, they were even more fragile-looking, thin wrists, hollow cheeks, smudges of exhaustion beneath identical blue eyes. Michael felt an unfamiliar tightness in his chest. Anger, he realized. Not at them, but at whoever had left them here, at this gate in the middle of nowhere, with nothing but a stuffed bear and each other. "My name is Michael," he said, keeping his voice steady. "What are your names?" "I'm Emma," said the one with the teddy bear. "This is Ellie. She's older. By 7 minutes." This fact seemed important to her, a small certainty in what must have been a sea of uncertainties. "Emma and Ellie," Michael repeated. "I'm going to get you somewhere safe, okay?" He didn't wait for their answer. Gently, he scooped them up, one in each arm. They were alarmingly light, like picking up shadows. They didn't resist, instead molding against him with the instinctive trust of children who had nowhere else to turn. As Michael carried them back to his car, he felt their small hands clutching at his shirt, felt their hearts beating against his chest. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, Michael Harrington was absolutely certain that his next action would matter, truly matter, in a way that billion-dollar deals and corporate mergers never could. The drive to the nearest town took 40 minutes. Emma and Ellie sat huddled together in the back seat of Michael's Bentley, their small frames nearly swallowed by the leather upholstery. They fell asleep almost immediately, exhaustion finally claiming them now that they weren't fighting to stay alert. Michael kept glancing at them in the rearview mirror, a strange mix of emotions churning inside him. He had tried asking them more questions before they drifted off. The answers he received were sparse, delivered in those quiet, careful voices that made his chest ache. "Where's your mother?" he had asked. "She said she had to go away," Emma had replied, fingers worrying at the ear of her teddy bear. "She told us to wait at the gate," Ellie had added. "She said someone good would find us." "When did she leave you there?" The girls had looked at each other, that silent communication again. "When the sun was small 3 times, Emma had finally said. 3 days, Michael realized with horror. 3 days alone in that empty field. Did she say when she'd come back? She was crying, Ellie had whispered. She said she was sorry. That was all he could get from them before their eyelids grew heavy and their bodies slumped against each other. Now, as he pulled into the parking lot of Mercy Regional Hospital in the town of Lakefield, Massachusetts, Michael wondered what he had stumbled into. Who leaves 2 little girls by the side of a forgotten road? What could drive a mother to such desperation? The emergency room was quiet when they entered, a blessing Michael hadn't expected. He carried both girls in his arms, still sound asleep. The nurse at the registration desk looked up, her eyes widening at the sight. "They need help," Michael said simply. Things moved quickly after that. A doctor was called, Dr. Patterson, a woman with gray-streaked hair and efficient hands. The girls woke when she approached, shrinking back against Michael until he assured them it was okay. They were taken to an examination room, where they refused to let go of Michael's hands. "I found them by the side of a rural road," he explained to Dr. Patterson in low tones. "Alone, behind a fence. They say they've been there for 3 days." The doctor's expression remained neutral, but her eyes hardened. She nodded once, then turned a gentle smile to the twins. "Emma, Ellie, I'm going to check if you're okay. It won't hurt, I promise." The examination revealed what Michael had feared: dehydration, malnutrition, exposure, but no signs of physical abuse. Dr. Patterson assured him quietly. "They need fluids, food, rest, and we need to contact the authorities." As if summoned by the words, a woman in a navy pantsuit appeared at the door an hour later. She introduced herself as Andrea Walsh from the Department of Children and Families. Her face was professionally blank as she took in the scene, the twin girls in hospital beds, hooked up to 4 fluids, and Michael sitting between them, still in his $1,000 suit, now rumpled and stained. "Mr. Harrington," she said, gesturing to the hallway. A word. Michael followed her out, reluctant to leave the girls but aware that he needed to speak with the official. As soon as they were out of earshot, Andrea's demeanor shifted from neutral to coolly suspicious. "You say you found these children abandoned?" "Yes, off Route 17, About 40 miles west of here. There's a dirt road that branches north. And you have no prior connection to them? She interrupted. Michael frowned. None. I was just driving by. Why would you ask that? Andrea consulted her tablet. Because we have no matching records in our system, Mr. Harrington. No missing children reports for twin girls of their age in this state. No birth records matching their description or first names in Lakefield County. Maybe they're from another county? Another state? We're checking. But it's unusual. Her eyes narrowed slightly. And you're a long way from Boston. There it was. Michael recognized the calculation in her eyes. Wealthy businessman, no obvious reason to be in the middle of nowhere, shows up with 2 mystery children. He couldn't entirely blame her for the suspicion. I was taking a drive. Clearing my head, he said, keeping his voice even. Look, all I know is what I told you. They were alone, behind a fence. They said their mother left them there to wait for someone safe. Andrea made a note on her tablet. We'll need to take them into emergency custody while we investigate. What does that mean? Michael asked, an unexpected protectiveness flaring within him. They'll be placed in temporary foster care until we locate their family or determine next steps. Separate them? The words came out sharper than he intended. Andrea's expression softened fractionally. We try to keep siblings together, especially in cases like this. But I can't make promises. Our system is overloaded. Michael glanced back at the hospital room where Emma and Ellie were watching the door with wide, anxious eyes. They had already been abandoned once. The thought of them being shuttled between strangers, possibly separated, made his stomach turn. What if he began, then stopped, stunned by what he had been about to suggest. What was he thinking? He ran a multinational corporation. He lived alone. He had board meetings and investor calls and charity galas. He wasn't equipped to take care of 2 traumatized children. And yet, Mr. Harrington? Andrea prompted. Michael straightened his shoulders. I want to apply for emergency foster placement. Andrea's eyebrows rose. That's a significant commitment. I'm aware. There are home visits, background checks, training requirements, I understand. And I have the resources to provide everything they need. He met her skeptical gaze steadily. I found them, Ms. Walsh. I made them a promise that they would be safe. I intend to keep it. For a long moment, Andrea studied him, as if trying to read his true intentions. Finally, she sighed. I'll start the paperwork. But this is highly unusual, and I can't guarantee approval. Michael nodded, not trusting himself to speak. What had come over him? This wasn't like him. Acting on impulse, making emotional decisions. He was known for his calculated risk assessments, his cold logic in the boardroom. Not for offering to foster 2 strange children he'd found by the side of the road. When he returned to the hospital room, Emma and Ellie were sitting up in their beds, picking at plates of hospital food. They looked up when he entered, their faces brightening just enough to send another pang through his chest. Are they going to take us away? Ellie asked quietly. Michael sat between their beds again. Not right away, he said carefully. And I've asked if you can stay with me for a while. At your house. Emma clutched her teddy bear tighter. Yes, I have a very big house. Too big, really, for just one person. The girls exchanged one of their looks. Then Emma asked, Do you have kids? No, Michael admitted. I never did. Why not? Ellie's question was direct, without the filters adults learn to apply. Michael considered how to answer. The truth was complicated. A series of choices made in pursuit of success, relationships sacrificed on the altar of ambition, the gradual hardening of a heart that had once dreamed of family. But looking at these 2 fragile girls with their solemn eyes, he found himself unable to explain any of that. I guess I was waiting, he said finally. For what? Emma's question was barely audible. Michael smiled, surprising himself with how genuine it felt. For someone who needed me. The next morning, Michael sat in his parked car outside the hospital, phone pressed to his ear. He had barely slept, spending most of the night making calls and pulling strings. Being wealthy had its advantages. Doors opened, processes accelerated, exceptions made. But even Michael Harrington couldn't bend the entire system to his will overnight. I don't care what it costs, Rachel, he told his executive assistant. Cancel my meetings for the week. The Singapore deal can wait. In the 20 years Rachel had worked for him, Michael had never voluntarily missed a meeting. Her confusion was palpable through the phone. Sir, are you sure you're all right? Should I send Dr. Lieberman to your location? I'm fine. I just need time to handle a personal matter. He hesitated, then added, I need you to connect me with Jim Donovan. Rachel paused. Your lawyer or your private investigator? Both. And contact Meredith Chun in real estate. I need her to prepare the lake house for immediate occupancy. Another pause. The lake house hasn't been used in years, sir. I'm aware. Have it ready by tomorrow afternoon. Furniture, utilities, stocked kitchen. Hire whatever staff is necessary. He thought for a moment. And find out what 7-year-old girls need. Clothes, toys, whatever is appropriate. To her credit, Rachel didn't ask why her 60-year-old, childless boss suddenly needed these things. She simply said, I'll take care of it, and hung up. Michael stared at his reflection in the rearview mirror. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his usually immaculate silver hair was disheveled. He looked older, more vulnerable than the man who smiled confidently from the cover of Forbes last month. What was he doing? This wasn't rational. It wasn't strategic. Since when did Michael Harrington act on pure instinct? Since yesterday, apparently. Since two pairs of identical blue eyes looked up at him with a mixture of fear and hope. Inside the hospital, Emma and Ellie were being discharged. The DCF caseworker, Andrea Walsh, was there with paperwork and stern reminders. The emergency foster placement was temporary, extremely temporary, just until a proper foster family could be located or a family member identified. Michael would need to complete expedited foster parent training, and there would be frequent home visits. Have you found any record of them yet? Michael asked as they waited for the discharge nurse. Andrea shook her head. Nothing in Massachusetts. We're checking neighboring states. The medical examination suggests they're approximately 7 years old, but without documentation, we can't be certain. What about their mother? Any reports of a missing woman? Not in this area. Andrea lowered her voice. Mr. Harrington, I have to ask, are you absolutely sure about this? The system has resources for children like Emma and Ellie. You're not obligated to, I'm sure, Michael said firmly. He watched the twins sitting on the edge of the hospital bed, swinging their legs in identical rhythms. They wore donated clothes from the hospital's charity closet, jeans and t-shirts that hung loosely on their thin frames. They've been through enough already. Andrea studied him, then nodded. We'll be conducting a preliminary home visit this afternoon. I assume you live in Boston. Actually, we'll be staying at my house in Stockbridge. It's more suitable for children. It was also closer to where he'd found the girls, though Michael didn't mention that. He had his own investigation in mind. That afternoon, Jim Donovan arrived at the lake house just as Michael was settling the girls in. The private investigator was a former Boston detective with a weathered face and shrewd eyes that missed nothing. He took in the scene. The massive colonial-style home on the shores of Stockbridge Bowl, the luxury SUV in the driveway, the twin girls cautiously exploring the wraparound porch under Michael's watchful gaze. Never thought I'd see the day, Jim commented dryly as he approached. Michael Harrington, playing house. Michael ignored the jab. I need you to find their mother. Jim's expression turned serious. Tell me everything. As they walked the perimeter of the property, Michael recounted the events of the previous day, from finding the girls to the hospital visit to the emergency foster placement. Jim listened without interruption, occasionally making notes in a small pad. So no ID, no records in the system, and the only clue is a dirt road 40 miles from here, Jim summarized when Michael finished. Not much to go on. I'll take you to the exact spot tomorrow. There must be something there that can help us trace where they came from. Jim tucked his notebook away. And what exactly is your interest here, Michael? In 20 years, I've never seen you get personally involved in a case. You write checks, you make calls, you delegate. You don't bring strangers into your home. Michael watched Emma and Ellie, who had discovered a tire swing hanging from an ancient oak near the water's edge. They were taking turns pushing each other, their laughter carrying across the lawn, tentative at first, then growing bolder. I don't know, he admitted quietly. I just couldn't leave them to the system. Jim followed his gaze, his expression softening slightly. Well, for what it's worth, my money's on a mother in serious trouble. Maybe running from something. Or someone. Domestic violence. Maybe, or worse. The fact that she left them where they might be found suggests she wanted them safe, even if she couldn't stay with them. Or couldn't protect them, Michael added grimly. I'll start canvassing. Traffic cameras, police reports, hospital admissions. There can't be that many women with twin daughters in this part of the state. Jim turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. If there's someone dangerous in the picture, a father, a boyfriend, they might come looking. I'd suggest additional security while we figure this out. Michael nodded. Already arranged. The property has a state-of-the-art system, and I've hired 2 plainclothes guards. They'll be discreet. Jim raised an eyebrow. You really are serious about this? Before Michael could respond, Andrea Walsh's car pulled into the driveway for the scheduled home visit. The next few hours were a blur of paperwork, questions, and inspections. The lake house, though long and used, was pristine thanks to Rachel's mobilization of a small army of cleaners and designers. By evening, Andrea seemed cautiously satisfied, if still puzzled by Michael's involvement. We'll continue searching for their family, she reminded him as she prepared to leave. This arrangement is temporary. Don't forget that. After dinner, pizza, which the girls approached with wonder, as if they'd never seen it before, Michael helped them settle into a bedroom that Rachel's team had hastily but expertly prepared. Twin beds with matching quilts, a bookshelf filled with children's classics, and a nightlight shaped like a crescent moon that cast a gentle glow across the walls. Is this all for us? Emma asked, eyes wide as she clutched her teddy bear. All of it, Michael confirmed. He sat on the edge of Ellie's bed. Tomorrow, we'll get you some more clothes and toys. Whatever you need. Ellie studied him with that intense, too-old gaze. Why are you being so nice to us? The question caught Michael off guard. How could he explain something he didn't fully understand himself? Because everyone deserves kindness, he said finally. Especially when they're scared. We're not scared anymore, Emma said from her bed, but the way she gripped her bear belied her words. Michael smiled gently. That's good, but it's okay if you are, sometimes. Even grown-ups get scared. Are you scared? Ellie asked. The question pierced him. Was he? Not of physical danger or financial ruin, the usual risks that businessmen calculated, but of failing these children somehow? Of whatever had made their mother desperate enough to leave them by the side of a road? Of the strange, unfamiliar feelings they stirred in him? Sometimes, he admitted. But right now, I'm just glad you're safe. As he turned out the light and closed their door partway, Michael heard Emma's small voice. Do you think Mom is coming back for us? He paused in the hallway, heart heavy. The question had no easy answer, and he wouldn't lie to them. But standing there, listening to the soft sounds of the girls settling into their beds, Michael Harrington made a silent promise. He would find out what happened to their mother. He would uncover the truth, no matter how painful. And he would protect these children, no matter what that truth revealed. For the first time in decades, something mattered more than shareholder value or market position. Something that couldn't be quantified on a balance sheet or explained in a board meeting. Something that made the vast empire he'd built seem suddenly hollow and insufficient. Michael went to his study and poured himself a rare glass of whiskey. Through the window, he could see the moonlight reflecting off the lake. Somewhere out there was a woman who had given birth to Emma and Ellie. A woman who had, for reasons still unknown, left her children with nothing but a teddy bear and instructions to wait for someone safe. Michael had spent his life pursuing power and wealth, believing those were the things that mattered. Now, faced with the fragile trust of 2 abandoned children, he found himself questioning everything he thought he knew. What good was all his money if it couldn't answer the simple question 2 little girls wanted to know above all others? Where is our mother? Why did she leave us? Tomorrow, he would begin searching for those answers. Tonight, he would simply be grateful that, by whatever twist of fate, he had been the one to drive down that forgotten road yesterday afternoon. The next week passed in a blur of activity. Michael established a routine with the girls that surprised him with how quickly it felt natural. Mornings began with breakfast on the porch overlooking the lake, pancakes, which the twins devoured with enthusiasm. Afternoons were filled with walks around the property, visits from Andrea Walsh, and quiet reading sessions where Michael discovered he had a knack for voices when reading Charlotte's Web. Throughout it all, Jim Donovan worked tirelessly behind the scenes. He visited the location where Michael had found the girls, interviewed locals in nearby towns, and dug through databases that most people didn't know existed. But the search yielded frustratingly little information. Until the 7th day, when Jim arrived at the lake house with a manila folder tucked under his arm. His expression, a mixture of triumph and concern, told Michael that whatever he had found was significant. We need to talk, Jim said quietly, nodding toward the study. Alone, Michael glanced at Emma and Ellie, who were engrossed in a board game with Maria, the nanny he'd hired to help care for them. "Give me a minute." He approached the girls, kneeling beside their game. "I need to speak with Mr. Donovan for a little while. Will you be okay with Maria?" Ellie looked up, studying his face with that perceptive gaze. "You look worried." "Just some grown-up business," Michael assured her, amazed at how easily this child could read him when board members twice her age often couldn't. "I won't be long." In the study, Jim placed the folder on the desk between them but kept his hand on it. "I need to ask you something first, and I need an honest answer." Michael tensed. "What is it? Have you ever been to a town called Millfield? It's about 60 miles north of here, just over the Vermont border." "No," Michael said, frowning. "Why?" "Because that's where our search led us." Jim opened the folder, revealing a printout from a traffic camera. "This is from a gas station in Millfield, dated 2 weeks ago." The grainy image showed a woman with shoulder-length brown hair, her face partly obscured as she pumped gas into an old sedan. But what caught Michael's attention were the two small figures visible in the car's back seat, two heads of honey blonde hair. "That's them," he said, leaning closer. "Emma and Ellie." Jim nodded. "I believe so." The clerk remembered them, said the woman seemed anxious, kept looking over her shoulder. "Paid in cash." He laid out more documents, a receipt from a motel outside Millfield, a police report about a suspicious person matching the woman's description. "And the mother?" Michael asked. "Did you identify her?" Jim removed one final paper from the folder, placing it squarely before Michael. It was a driver's license, expired 3 years ago. The photo showed a younger version of the woman from the traffic camera, her eyes clearer, her smile tentative but genuine. "Claire Hensley," Jim said, watching Michael's face carefully. "Age 38. Last known residence was an apartment in Millfield that was evicted 6 months ago. Before that, she lived in a dozen different places across 3 states in the past 8 years. Michael stared at the name, a strange ringing in his ears. Claire Hensley. Claire. The room seemed to tilt slightly, decades falling away in an instant. He must have paled, because Jim leaned forward, concerned. "Michael? You okay?" "Claire," Michael whispered, reaching out to touch the photograph with trembling fingers. "I know her." Jim's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean you know her?" Michael sank into his chair, memories cascading through him like a broken dam. Claire's laugh in a college courtyard, her hand in his as they walked through autumn leaves. The way she used to call him Mickey, the only person he'd ever allowed to use that nickname. The tearful argument in his dorm room when he told her he was accepting the internship in New York instead of following their plan to move to Vermont together. "We were together in college," he said hoarsely. "Boston University, junior and senior year. I haven't seen her since graduation. Almost 30 years ago." Jim's expression darkened. "You didn't think to mention this when you found 2 abandoned children who might be connected to an old girlfriend?" "I didn't know," Michael insisted, his mind racing. "The name meant nothing when the girls told me. Just Emma and Ellie. And I had no idea." He broke off, the implications suddenly hitting him with full force. "Jim, when was Claire's birthday?" "August 17th, 1986, Jim read from his notes. "And the girls? What's their estimated age?" "The doctor put them at around 7. Michael did the math quickly. "That would mean they were born in 2017 or 2018. "Right." Jim pulled out another document. "I found hospital records for Claire Hensley. She gave birth to twin girls on October 3rd, 2017. He paused, letting the significance of the date sink in. "Exactly 9 months after the last charity gala you attended before your heart attack in January." Michael felt as if all the air had been sucked from the room. The New Year's Eve gala at the Plaza Hotel. His annual donation to his alma mater. The familiar face across the crowded ballroom. Older, but unmistakable. Claire, working as a server for the catering company. Their eyes meeting, the shock of recognition, followed by awkward conversation that had turned warmer after a few glasses of champagne. The invitation to his hotel suite, accepted with a mixture of hesitation and something that might have been longing for a path not taken. He had left before dawn, a generous tip on the nightstand, a mumbled excuse about early meetings. He'd had his heart attack 2 weeks later, and in the months of recovery and corporate damage control that followed, the encounter had faded to a distant memory, a moment of nostalgia and weakness he hadn't allowed himself to dwell on. The father isn't listed on the birth certificate, Jim said quietly, watching the realization dawn on Michael's face. They're mine, Michael whispered, the words catching in his throat. Emma and Ellie are my daughters. The truth settled over him like a physical weight. He had children, daughters, 2 little girls who had been growing, learning, living for 7 years without his knowledge. 2 little girls who had been abandoned by the side of a road, waiting for someone safe to find them. 2 little girls who had no idea that the stranger who had rescued them was their father. Jim gathered the documents back into the folder. There's more, and none of it's good. Claire has a history of mental health issues, hospitalizations for severe depression, paranoia, PTSD. The last admission was 3 months ago, after what hospital records describe as a psychotic episode. She was released to a halfway house, but disappeared 2 weeks later. Why didn't she ever contact me? Michael asked, more to himself than to Jim. If she knew the girls were mine. That's the million-dollar question. Jim's face was grim. But given her medical history, it's possible she wasn't thinking clearly. The hospital notes mentioned delusions about being followed, about people trying to take her children. Maybe she thought you were part of whatever threat she perceived. Or maybe she knew exactly who I was and wanted to keep the girls away from me, Michael said bitterly. The heartless CEO who chose money over love 30 years ago. We don't know that, Jim said firmly. What we do know is that we have 2 little girls in the next room who have no idea who their father is, and a mother who may be in serious trouble, medical, legal, or both. The question is, what are you going to tell them? Michael stood and walked to the window. Outside, Emma and Ellie were laughing as Maria pushed them on the tire swing. Their golden hair caught the afternoon sunlight. His daughters. The thought was simultaneously terrifying and exhilarating. Nothing. Not yet. He turned back to Jim. First, we need to find Claire. Whatever her reasons for leaving them, they deserve to know what happened to their mother. And I deserve to hear from her directly why she kept my children a secret for 7 years. And if we do find her, what then? Michael didn't have an answer. The man he'd been a week ago, cold, calculating, focused solely on the next acquisition, would have seen this as a problem to be solved, a liability to be managed. But that man had been changing since the moment he spotted 2 small figures huddled by a rusted gate. One step at a time, he said finally. Find her, Jim. Use whatever resources you need. As Jim left to continue his search, Michael remained in the study, staring at Claire's driver's license photo. The face that had once been so familiar, now a stranger's. What had happened to her in the years since they'd parted ways? What hardships had she endured while he amassed his fortune? And the most haunting question of all, what kind of desperation would drive a mother to abandon her children, even with the hope someone safe would find them? He had no answers yet. But looking out at Emma and Ellie, his daughters, Michael made another silent vow. Whatever Claire's reasons, whatever had led to this moment, he would make it right. He would become the father these girls deserved, even if he had no idea how to be one. 3 days after Jim Donovan's revelation, Michael sat in his car outside a nondescript building in Burlington, Vermont. The Vermont State Psychiatric Center was housed in a surprisingly modern structure of glass and brick, set back from the road and surrounded by carefully maintained gardens. From the outside, it could have been a small community college or a tech startup office, if not for the discreet security measures visible to those who knew what to look for. Michael had barely slept since learning the truth. His nights were spent poring over every document Jim had uncovered, trying to reconstruct the missing years of Claire's life. The picture that emerged was devastating. A bright young woman whose life had gradually unraveled. After their breakup, Claire had finished her degree but never pursued the teaching career she'd planned. Instead, she drifted through a series of jobs across New England, each less prestigious than the last. There was a marriage 8 years ago to a man named Edward Dawson, who had a record of domestic violence complaints from previous relationships. 2 years later, a restraining order against Dawson, followed by a divorce. Then the birth of the twins, and an accelerating pattern of moves and instability. Through it all, Claire's medical records showed increasing struggles with mental health, diagnoses of depression, anxiety, PTSD, and eventually, paranoid episodes that led to multiple hospitalizations. The most recent had come after Claire was found wandering a Walmart parking lot at 3 a.m., the twins asleep in her car. She had been incoherent, insisting that they were coming for her children. After her release from that hospitalization, she had vanished, until yesterday, when Vermont State Police found her sleeping in her car outside a library in Burlington. The psychiatric center had admitted her on an involuntary hold after she became hysterical during questioning about her children's whereabouts. Jim had pulled strings to arrange this visit, but warned Michael that Claire might not be in any condition to speak with him. Still, Michael had to try. He owed it to Emma and Ellie. He owed it to Claire. And if he was honest, he owed it to himself, to the young man who had loved her once and chosen a different path. The intake nurse led Michael through sterile hallways to a small meeting room with soft lighting and comfortable chairs. Ms. Hensley has been informed that she has a visitor, but we didn't tell her who, she explained. Dr. Bennett feels it's best to avoid any unexpected shocks. She's been heavily medicated for the first 48 hours, but she's more lucid today. How is she? Michael asked, his usual eloquence failing him. The nurse's face softened slightly. She's fragile. The doctor can explain her condition in more detail, but you should prepare yourself. This isn't her first episode, and recovery is rarely linear. She gestured to a call button on the wall. Press this if you need assistance. I'll bring her in now. Michael straightened his tie, then thought better of it and removed it altogether, tucking it into his pocket. Claire had always teased him about his formal attire, even in college. You dress like you're apologizing for something, she'd once said. Maybe she had been right. When the door opened again, Michael's breath caught in his throat. Claire entered slowly, her movements careful and deliberate. She was thinner than in her driver's license photo, her brown hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore hospital-issued clothes, soft pants, and a loose shirt that seemed to hang on her frame. But it was her eyes that struck him most, the same clear blue that he saw every day in Emma and Ellie, now clouded with a wariness that broke his heart. She didn't recognize him at first. She sat in the chair opposite him, her gaze unfocused, fingers nervously twisting the fabric of her pants. The nurse withdrew discreetly, leaving them alone. Claire, Michael said gently. It's me. Michael. Michael Harrington. Her eyes snapped to his face, widening in shock. For a moment, she seemed unable to speak. Then, in a voice that was both familiar and strange, she whispered, Mickey. The nickname, and used for 30 years, brought a lump to his throat. Yes, it's been a long time. How did you? Why are you? She stopped, her expression shifting from confusion to fear. The girls. My girls. Did something happen to my girls? They're safe, Michael assured her quickly. They're with me, at my house in Stockbridge. I found them, Claire, by the side of a road, behind a fence. I've been taking care of them. Relief washed over her face, followed immediately by suspicion. No, that's not possible. You can't have them. It's a trick. She started to rise, but Michael remained seated, making no move toward her. Emma still carries a teddy bear named Mr. Whiskers, he said quietly. Ellie is 7 minutes older, and she never lets her sister forget it. They both love pancakes with blueberries, but pick out the blueberries first and eat them separately. Claire sank back into her chair, tears filling her eyes. You really found them. You really have them. A sob escaped her. Are they okay? Did I hurt them by leaving them there? They're physically fine, Michael said carefully. But they miss their mother. They ask about you every day. Claire's hands trembled as she wiped away tears. I had to leave them somewhere safe. Edward found us again. He said he was going to take them, that he had rights as their stepfather. That no one would believe me because I'm crazy. Her voice cracked on the last word. I'm not crazy. I know what he's capable of. Edward Dawson? Your ex-husband. Michael leaned forward. Claire, he doesn't have any legal rights to the girls. You're divorced, and he's not their biological father. But he knows people. He said he'd get a court order, that he'd prove I was an unfit mother. Claire's eyes darted around the room, as if expecting Edward to materialize from the corners. I couldn't let him take them. I couldn't keep running. I thought if I left them somewhere, someone kind would find them. Someone safe. And then when Edward stopped looking, when I figured out what to do, I could come back for them. Michael's throat constricted. Despite everything, the abandoned children, the apparent paranoia, there was a terrible logic to Claire's actions. A desperate mother's last resort to protect her children from a threat she believed was imminent. Claire, he said, choosing his words carefully. Jim Donovan, my investigator, looked into Edward Dawson. He's currently in New Hampshire, serving 18 months for aggravated assault in an unrelated case. He's been incarcerated for the past 5 months. He wasn't following you. Claire stared at him, confusion etched on her face. No, that's wrong. I saw him 3 weeks ago, outside the grocery store. He threatened me. It wasn't him, Claire. It couldn't have been. She shook her head violently. I know what I saw. I'm not. She broke off, doubt creeping into her expression. Unless. She pressed her palms against her temples. The doctor said I might be experiencing delusions again, but it felt so real. Michael ached to reach for her, to offer comfort, but kept the distance between them. I believe that you believed it was real. That's what matters. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of decades of separation and misunderstanding hanging between them. Finally, Claire looked up, her gaze clearer than before. You said you've been taking care of them, she said. Why would you do that? You didn't even know who they were. The moment had come sooner than Michael had expected. He drew a deep breath. At first, because they needed someone, and I was there. But now, Claire, I know they're mine. Our daughters. Claire didn't seem surprised. She simply nodded slowly. I wondered if you'd figure it out. They look like you, around the eyes. And they're too smart for their own good, just like you were. Why didn't you tell me? Michael asked, unable to keep the pain from his voice. 7 years, Claire. What? She laughed, a hollow sound with no humor in it. Tell you what, that the girl you left behind for your big career was pregnant after our one-night reunion? That the successful CEO of Harrington Enterprises had fathered twins with a mentally unstable waitress? She shook her head. What would you have done, Michael? Sent money? Insisted on a paternity test? Accused me of trying to trap you for your fortune? Each question hit him like a physical blow, because he couldn't honestly say what he would have done 7 years ago. The Michael Harrington who had slept with Claire that New Year's Eve had been at the height of his power and arrogance, driven, ruthless, and emotionally detached from everything except his business empire. I would have had a right to know, he said finally. Yes, Claire admitted, her voice softening. You would have. But I was afraid, and then proud, and then sick. The more time passed, the harder it became to imagine telling you. She looked away, and part of me wanted to keep them for myself. They were the only good, pure thing in my life. They still are, Michael said. And you're still their mother, Claire. Nothing changes that. Her eyes filled with tears again. But I left them. I abandoned my babies. What kind of mother does that? A desperate one, Michael said. A mother who thought she was protecting them the only way she could. Claire's shoulders slumped. The doctor says I need to stay here. That I need comprehensive treatment this time. Not just medications and release. Months, maybe longer. Then that's what you'll do, Michael said firmly. You'll get the treatment you need, and Emma and Ellie will be waiting when you're better. With you? The question was barely audible. Yes, Michael said, certainty filling him. With me. I'll take care of them, Claire. I promise you that. And I'll make sure they know their mother loves them, that you never wanted to leave them, that you did what you did to protect them. Claire studied him, as if searching for the boy she had known beneath the successful man he had become. Why should I believe you? You left once before. When things got hard, when there was a choice to be made, you chose your career over us. I did, Michael acknowledged, the admission painful but necessary. I was wrong, and I've paid for that choice every day since, though I didn't recognize the cost until now. But I'm not that person anymore, Claire. Finding Emma and Ellie, it's changed me. They've changed me. For the first time, Claire's expression softened toward him. They have that effect, she said. Then, after a moment's hesitation, I never told them about you. I never told them who their father was. I know, Michael said. I haven't told them either. But I think they should know the truth when the time is right. Claire nodded slowly. When I'm better, when I can be part of explaining it to them. She drew a shaky breath. Can I see them? Not now, but soon. Of course. As soon as your doctors say it's okay. Michael leaned forward. They ask about you every night, Claire. They never stopped believing you'd come back for them. Claire covered her face with her hands, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. When she looked up again, her eyes were red but determined. Tell them I love them. Tell them Mommy is getting better so she can come home to them. I will, Michael promised. Every day. As he left the psychiatric center an hour later, Michael felt a strange mixture of grief and hope. The woman he had once loved was damaged in ways he couldn't fully comprehend. The mother of his children was fighting battles he could only witness from the outside. But for the first time in 30 years, he felt connected to Claire again, not through romance or nostalgia, but through the two small lives they had created together, however unintentionally. In his car, Michael called Jim Donovan. "I need you to look into Edward Dawson more thoroughly," he said without preamble. "Claire is convinced he threatened her recently, even though he's supposed to be incarcerated. You think she might be right? That it wasn't a delusion?" "I don't know," Michael admitted. "But I'm not taking any chances with my daughter's safety." The word daughters still felt foreign on his tongue, but each time he said it, something shifted inside him, the beginning of an identity he had never expected to claim. 6 months passed in a rhythm that gradually transformed from strange to familiar to essential. Michael withdrew from the day-to-day operations of Harrington Enterprises, delegating to his COO and working remotely when necessary. His board members were bewildered by the change, but a heart-to-heart with the chairwoman, during which he revealed his newfound fatherhood, had secured him the space he needed. Family leave, she had called it with a smile, though at 60, Michael hardly fit the profile of a new father. Spring bloomed across the Berkshires, turning the lakeside property into a paradise of wildflowers and birdsong. Emma and Ellie flourished in the fresh air and stable environment. They had started at the local elementary school in January, where they quickly became known for their identical appearances but distinctly different personalities. Emma, the dreamer, excelled in art and storytelling. Ellie, more practical and analytical, devoured math and science with equal enthusiasm. Their legal status had been formalized through a series of court proceedings, paternity tests, custody agreements, and finally, adoption papers signed by both Michael and Claire. The girls' birth certificates now officially named Michael Harrington as their father, a fact that had made the local papers despite Michael's attempts at privacy. The twins still didn't know the full truth. Michael and Claire had agreed, with the support of the children's therapist, to wait until Claire was more stable before explaining how Michael was more than just the kind stranger who had found them by the fence. For now, he was simply Michael, their guardian, their protector, the grown-up who never missed a school play or forgot to check for monsters under the bed. Claire's recovery had been slow but steady. After 3 months of intensive inpatient treatment, she had transitioned to a residential program that allowed more freedom while maintaining the structure she needed. Michael visited her weekly, sometimes alone, sometimes with carefully supervised visits with the girls. These reunions were emotional, but healing for everyone involved. Today was different, though. Today, Claire was coming to the lake house for the first time, a day visit, a trial run for the eventual goal of shared custody. Michael had spent the morning in a state of nervous energy, checking and rechecking preparations that had been in place for days. "They're too tight," Ellie complained as Michael attempted to secure her hair in the braided style Claire had always done. "Sorry, kiddo." He loosened the elastic and tried again, his large fingers clumsy with the delicate strands. After 3 attempts, he produced something approximating a braid, though several rebellious wisps had already escaped. "Better." Ellie twisted to examine her reflection in the bathroom mirror, then grinned. "Better. But Mom does it prettier." "I know," Michael agreed, his heart warming at how easily Ellie still referred to Claire as Mom, despite the months of separation. "That's why we're lucky she's coming today. She can fix my amateur attempts." In the kitchen, Emma was arranging freshly cut flowers from the garden in a vase, zinnias and black-eyed Susans in a riot of color. "Do you think Mom will like these?" she asked anxiously. "She'll love them," Michael assured her, straightening a picture the girls had drawn that now hung prominently on the refrigerator. The drawing showed 4 figures holding hands beside a blue blob that Michael assumed was the lake. 2 small identical figures, 1 taller female figure and 1 very tall male figure. "The Harrington family," Emma had written across the top in her careful script. The sound of tires on gravel sent both girls racing to the window. "She's here," they cried in unison, then bolted for the front door before Michael could remind them to walk, not run. Claire stepped from the car looking more like her old self than Michael had seen in months. Her hair was styled simply but elegantly, her clothes casual but neat. Most importantly, her eyes were clear and present, not clouded by medication or fear. She had barely closed the car door before Emma and Ellie tackled her with hugs, nearly knocking her over with the force of their enthusiasm. "Whoa, my beautiful girls. Claire laughed, kneeling to embrace them properly. Let me look at you. You've grown so much. She studied their faces, touching their cheeks with gentle fingers. Are you being good for Michael? Mostly. Ellie answered honestly, while Emma nodded vigorously. He can't braid hair right, Ellie added, turning to display Michael's handiwork. Claire's eyes met Michael's over the girls' heads, amusement and something warmer dancing in them. Well, not everyone can have my special mom talents. The day unfolded with an ease that none of them had dared hope for. They picnicked by the lake, the girls chattering nonstop about school friends and projects. They took Claire on a tour of their woods, showing her the fort Michael had helped them build and the family of ducks they had befriended. By late afternoon, they were all sprawled in the living room, Claire braiding Ellie's hair while Emma drew a picture of their day. When the girls went outside to feed the ducks one last time before dinner, Claire turned to Michael with tears in her eyes. Thank you, she said simply. For what? Michael asked, though he knew. For taking care of them when I couldn't. For giving them this home, this security. She gestured at the comfortable room with its evidence of children everywhere. Toys, books, artwork taped to walls. For not hating me for keeping them from you all those years. Michael shook his head. I could never hate you, Claire. Especially not now that I understand what you were going through. Claire's smile was sad but genuine. You've become a good father, Mickey. Better than I ever would have expected from that ambitious boy I knew in college. Having children changes you, Michael said. It was a cliché, but like most clichés, it contained a fundamental truth. They deserved better than the man I was. So I had to become someone else, someone better. Claire nodded, understanding in her eyes. Dr. Matthews thinks I can transition to independent living next month. An apartment near the center, where I can continue outpatient therapy, but have more freedom. That's wonderful news, Michael said, meaning it. Will it be in Burlington? Claire hesitated. Actually, I was thinking of Stockbridge. There's a similar program here, and I'd be closer to the girls. To all of you. The implication hung in the air between them, not just closer to the twins, but to Michael as well. These months of shared concern for their daughters had rebuilt a connection neither of them had expected to rediscover. I think that would be good for everyone, Michael said carefully. Emma and Ellie would be thrilled to have you nearby. And you? Claire asked, equally careful. Before Michael could answer, the girls burst back into the room, breathless with excitement from their duck-feeding adventure. The moment passed, but the question lingered, unanswered but not forgotten. That evening, after a dinner of Claire's famous spaghetti, recreated with much input from the twins, the time came for the conversation they had been preparing for. The children's therapist had coached them on approaching it gently but honestly, appropriate to the girls' age and understanding. They gathered in the living room. The twins snuggled between Claire and Michael on the large sectional sofa. Emma clutched Mr. Whiskers tightly, sensing the importance of the moment from the adults' expressions. Emma, Ellie, Claire began, her voice steady despite her obvious nervousness. We need to tell you something important about Michael, about me, and about our family. The girls looked between them, curious but unafraid. They had lived through enough change in their young lives to approach new information with resilience. You know how Michael found you that day by the fence, Claire continued. What you don't know is that Michael and I knew each other a long time ago, before you were born. Like friends? Ellie asked. Yes, like friends, Claire smiled. Very good friends, in college. Then we lost touch for many years, Michael added. Until one special New Year's Eve, when we met again by chance. Emma's brow furrowed in concentration. Is that how you knew where to find us? Because you knew Mom? No, sweetheart, Michael said gently. Finding you was completely by accident, or maybe fate. But what we want to tell you is about who I am to you. Claire took her daughter's hands in hers. Remember how you asked me once about your daddy, and I told you he lived far away? The twins nodded solemnly. Well, it turns out he wasn't as far away as I thought, Claire said. And now he's very close. In fact, he's right here. For a moment, confusion reigned on the girls' faces. Then Ellie, ever quicker to process information, turned to Michael with widening eyes. You're our dad. Michael nodded, his throat too tight for words. Our real dad? Emma asked, her voice small but not upset. Like you made us. Yes, Michael managed. I'm your biological father. But I didn't know about you until after I found you. Your mom and I were apart for a very long time. and I didn't know she had such amazing daughters." The girls were silent, processing this revelation. Then Emma asked, "Is that why you took care of us?" "Because you're our dad. I took care of you because you needed someone," Michael said truthfully. "I didn't know I was your father then. But once I found out, it made me even more determined to give you the best home I could." "So now we're a real family?" Ellie asked. "With a mom and a dad and everything?" Claire and Michael exchanged glances. "We're a family," Claire confirmed. "It might not look exactly like other families, because I'm still getting better and need to live separately for a while. But we both love you very, very much. More than anything in the world," Michael added. Emma looked thoughtful. "Is that why you look at Mom like that sometimes?" "Like what?" Michael asked, startled. "All soft and mushy," Emma clarified, making a face that was presumably her interpretation of soft and mushy. Claire laughed, breaking the tension. "Your father has always had a very expressive face. It's one of the things I remember about him from college. Along with his terrible dancing," she added in a stage whisper to the girls, who giggled. "My dancing has improved significantly," Michael protested with mock indignation. "Prove it," Ellie challenged, jumping up and running to the speaker system Michael had installed. She connected her tablet with practiced ease and scrolled through her playlist. Triumphantly, she selected a pop song with a driving beat that Michael vaguely recognized from the girls' morning dance parties. "Family Dance Battle," Emma declared, pulling Claire to her feet while Ellie grabbed Michael's hands. And so, in the warm light of a summer evening, with dusk settling over the lake outside, the newly acknowledged Harrington family danced, awkwardly, joyfully, together. Michael caught Claire's eye as they both attempted to follow their daughter's enthusiastic moves, and saw in her smile the same wonder he felt. That after all the wrong turns, all the years lost, all the pain endured, they had somehow found their way to this moment of pure, unexpected happiness. It wasn't perfect. Claire still had a long road of recovery ahead. Michael was still learning the language of fatherhood. Emma and Ellie would have questions and, someday, perhaps anger about the years of separation. But watching his daughter's laughter, seeing the woman who had given him these precious gifts finally at peace, Michael knew with bone-deep certainty that the family they were building, however unconventional, however fragile, was the greatest achievement of his life. Later, after Claire had left with promises to return soon and the girls were tucked into bed, Michael stood at the window of his study, watching the moonlight on the water. On his desk lay the final adoption papers, making official what his heart had known since the moment Jim Donovan had shown him Claire's driver's license. He was a father. These extraordinary girls were his daughters. And somehow, against all odds, the road less traveled had led him exactly where he needed to be.